On this training, I'm going to give you an example of how you can build a blind pull lead stream for you and your team where you can have a pool of data, but also have real-time leads flowing into that pool so that those leads are always contacted as quickly as possible, allowing your team to essentially just begin a dial session and stay dialing all day long, and the system will be prioritizing those new, hot, fresh leads and bringing those to the top as soon as they come in. And whenever there's no new, fresh leads, the team will just continue to work through all of the other contacts that have previously been called. So again, this is going to be a blind pull lead stream. This is going to be a little bit of a longer training call because we're going to start this. This is going to be a little bit of a longer training because we're going to be going start to finish in building out this blind pull lead stream. Now, I also am going to assume that you've watched some of the other training where you have a basic understanding of what a blind pull lead stream is, so that we're not going into all of the details of every little step. But rest assured, we will talk about all of the different details to some degree. So let's get into this. So as an admin, I'm going to go to the contact manager. And from the contact manager, over on the right-hand side in the little settings gear, I'm going to go down to lead stream. This is where I can go to create a brand new lead stream. I'm going to click on the add lead stream button. And I'm presented with a bunch of options. Again, hopefully you've watched the overviews and you've seen all of the detailed videos talking about each of these options, but we're going to go through this top to bottom anyway. But just not as in much detail as some of the other videos. So here we go. So we're going to go ahead and enable this lead stream. I'm going to give this a name of Hot Fresh Leads. Description is optional. Once I've given it a description, now I need to choose the type of lead stream that this is going to be. As you know, there are 3 type options: blind/preview pull, round robin, lead blitz. In our specific training, we're going to be focused on the blind pull option here. So I'm going to select blind/preview pull. When I make that selection, you'll see a new option show up directly below that for dialer presets. This is where we can define specific settings that are unique to this specific lead stream, any dial session that started through this lead stream. So I'm going to click on create a new preset because this account does not currently have any presets. I'm going to name this Hot Fresh Leads. And here I can define a phone script. I can define a voicemail. I can define the dialing and live answer sets. Again, those are the dispositions, the buttons that your team will use when they're making calls through this lead stream. I can define the caller ID. And I can define whether or not call recording is going to be enabled for dial sessions that start through this lead stream. Now, one thing I want to point out when you're making these decisions, when you're defining whether or not you want a phone script to show up, or if you want to assign a specific voicemail to this dialer preset, you have the option to choose Ask Me. If you select Ask Me, then when the reps begin their dial session, they'll be presented with a settings screen where they can choose the phone script or the voicemail that they want to use for that specific dial session. So keep that in mind when you are building out your lead stream. Do you want them to go straight into dialing? If so, then you want to define all of the settings here, and they won't have to configure anything. They'll just click the button to begin the dial session, get connected, and start dialing. And that's what I'm going to do in this particular case. I'm going to go ahead and define everything. So let's go ahead and hit Save Changes. And now you'll see that my Hot Fresh Leads dialer preset has been created. It is currently assigned to this lead stream, and we can move on to the next step, which is the distribution folder. Now, real quickly, the distribution folder is the folder in your PhoneBurner account that's going to contain all of the leads, all of the contacts that you want your team calling when they're working this particular lead stream. And remember, PhoneBurner is a folder-based CRM, so we use folders to help you manage and organize your data. So You just need to define the specific folder that you're going to put all of your leads in for this specific lead stream. So I'm going to click on create a new folder because I don't currently have a folder for these leads. And I'm going to call this folder Hot Fresh Leads. In most cases, I'm going to name the distribution folder after the lead stream that this is going to be assigned to. You can also make the folder a subfolder underneath an existing folder. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and just make this its own top level folder, and I'm going to click OK. Now we're going to scroll down to the next option, which is the receiving folder. The receiving folder is the folder the contacts will go into the moment you or your rep start making a call to a contact. So if we think back to the previous step, the distribution folder, any leads, any contacts that we put in the distribution folder, those are callable leads. They're available. They're part of the lead stream. They're ready to be called depending on the prioritization, right? If they're new or they're old, they've been called, whatever that might be, but they're available to be called. And once we start to call a contact, we know we don't want anybody else calling that contact. So we need to move the contact out of the distribution folder, and we're going to move that contact into what we call the receiving folder. The contact is going to stay in the receiving folder until the contact is either dispositioned into another folder, manually moved into another folder, or a specific amount of time elapses and that contact recycles back either into the distribution folder or into some other folder. And we'll talk about recycling in the next step. So let's go ahead and create a receiving folder. So I'm going to click on Create Folder. We're going to call this Hot Fresh Leads, actually Hot Fresh RCV for receiving. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK. So we're creating two new folders for this. We've got the distribution folder and the receiving folder. And then there's an option here for the receiving folder to be locked. In most cases, I like to lock the receiving folder. That way my reps can't change the receiving folder. However, there may be situations where when you're creating a lead stream, you want each rep to define their own receiving folder, in which case you can leave that set to no so that they can set their own receiving folder when they're looking at their lead streams. Now the next option, recycle folder. If a contact is called, so let's say I call Sally Prospect and she doesn't answer, so it goes to voicemail, no answer, busy signal, whatever, I don't connect with her, so I don't disposition her into another folder. She remains in the receiving folder. Do I want to recycle her? And if I do want to recycle her, when and where do I want to recycle her? So that's what we're choosing here. So I'm going to choose the Hot Fresh Leads, right? Because if I call Sally and she doesn't answer, I want to put her back in the pool to be called again the next time she's due to be called. And now I can choose when she should be recycled. I can set days, hours, minutes, whatever that might be. Now I'm calling Hot Fresh Leads, so I'm really going to be setting my recycle time to either hours or minutes. I certainly don't want to recycle a hot lead days later, right? I want my team reaching out to that contact regularly. So I might do something like 2 or 3 hours, depending on exactly how quickly or how many times I might want to have my team reach out to this contact when they come into the system. The next option here is a drop down where I can choose whether or not I'm going to recycle the contact based off of when the lead was distributed, or in the case of a blind pull lead stream, the moment the contact record was called through this lead stream. Or I can choose from time lead was last called. I'm going to leave this set as from time lead was distributed because I'm just going to call them. They don't answer. I'm going to put them back into the pool. I'm not going to be going into my account and trying to figure out who I should call again later on. That's not what this lead stream is about. We're going to leave the lead stream to make that decision for me. 2 hours later, boom, put it back into the pool, and eventually it will get called again, depending on, in this particular case, I've got my account configured to once again call hot fresh leads first. So anytime a new record is added to the lead stream, they go to the top of the list. Anything that recycles will get called later on, but one tweak that I have done to this specific account is it's going to call or prioritize contacts based off the total number of times somebody's been called. So if somebody's been called one time and they recycle, they're going to be above anybody who's been called 2, 3, or 4 times, even though those other contacts may have recycled sooner than Sally prospect in this particular case. And then the last option is to sort by custom field. I'm not going to make any adjustments here because I'm just calling hot, fresh leads. I'm calling the newest leads first, and then I'm recycling and calling based off of how many times a contact has been called. I have another option here for miscellaneous where I can hide the total number of leads. If for whatever reason I don't want my team to see how many leads are in this pool, I can check that box. But I'm not going to worry about that on this particular lead stream. So I'm going to go ahead and click Next, Add Recipients. And now I can start to add my team members to this lead stream. I can add them all at once, so I could select the top one, hold down Shift and select the last one, and that will select all of them so that I can add them all at the same time. I can add them all individually by selecting one at a time and then adding them. Or I can add a select group by holding down Control and selecting different users on the team. Anyone that's highlighted will be added with the settings that we're about to configure. And there are some additional settings that you can configure on a per rep basis when you're adding them to a lead stream. So the first option here is the total leads. You can limit the total number of leads someone can pull from this blind pull lead stream. And that's for the lifetime of them being a part of this lead stream. So this is a setting that you're probably not going to use very often, but if for whatever reason you want somebody to only be able to call 1,000 leads out of this lead stream, you could put 1,000 in here. And then once they hit 1,000 leads, they won't be able to make any calls from that lead stream anymore. You'd have to remove them, or you could increase that limit or remove that limit. I'm going to leave it blank, or you can set it to 0. Blank and 0 is the same thing. That sets it to unlimited calls from this blind pull lead stream. The next option is a daily lead limit. This one is more commonly used with our phone burner customers, where they might have these hot, fresh leads and they don't want one particular rep calling all of those leads all day long, right? They don't want that rep to take all of the leads. So they might limit each rep to only getting 50 leads a day from the hot, fresh leads lead stream. But in our particular case, we're not going to set any daily lead limits. We just want to give each user the ability to start smiling and dialing from this lead stream. And then down below that, we got another option for the pull type. Do we want it to be blind or preview pull for these reps? In this particular case, we are building out a blind pull lead stream, so we're going to leave everybody set to blind. But we will talk about when and why to use a preview pull lead stream. And then the final option is the dialer preset. You can actually create specific dialer presets for each individual rep. So if you want to have a specific script, a specific voicemail, a specific caller ID that a specific rep uses when they're making calls, you could actually create a custom dialer preset for that specific rep and assign it here. Again, I'm not going to do that for this particular case, so I'm just going to click on Add Recipient. When I click on Add Recipient, the reps that I had selected will now get added to my hot, fresh lead stream. And you'll see that in this particular case, I only added 2 of the 3 accounts, and Heather's still available. So let's say I added those 2 with unlimited, and now I want to add Heather, but I want to limit how much Heather can do with this lead stream. Maybe she can only call 30 contacts a day or 30 leads a day from this lead stream. Maybe she's newer and we don't want her calling all the hot, fresh leads. We want her to work a little bit of hot, fresh leads, and then we want her jumping over to some other lead stream or some other calls. And then, of course, I could choose a different dialer preset for her. Let's go ahead and add her now. Now our lead stream is updated. We'll see all of our team members that have been added to the lead stream. And if we ever need to edit one of these users, I can click on the little edit, And that'll bring up the options for that specific lead stream. Like, do we want to limit their total leads or daily leads? Do we want to change their pull type or their preset? All that can be updated after we've created them. And if at any point I wanted to pause somebody from being able to call from a lead stream, I've got this option here, this little stop button. That'll stop them from having access to that lead stream. But of course, we're not going to pause anybody. We just added them. So how does somebody start dialing from this lead stream? Once they've been added to the Blind Pull LeadStream, they will now have access to a Leads tab at the top of their screen. If they go to the Leads tab, they're going to see a list of all of the lead streams that they've been assigned to. In this particular case, we only have the one lead stream, and so we see that lead stream listed here. Anybody who's not assigned to the lead stream will not see this lead stream in their account. And if they have no lead streams, they won't even see the Leads tab. Now, if I load the Hot Fresh Leads lead stream here, you'll see there's 0 available leads, so I can't actually start making calls yet because we haven't put any leads into this lead stream. So now I can go to contacts. I could move existing contacts into the lead stream. I can import contacts into the lead stream, which is what I'm going to do right now. I'm obviously not going to spend too much time talking to you about importing. There's separate trainings on how to import, pretty straightforward. I'm just going to go ahead and map these fields, keeping it very simple here. Maybe we want 2 phone numbers, and we've got our email. I'm not going to worry about custom fields. There we go. Let's go ahead and hit next. Folder. Our folder is going to be our Hot Fresh Leads, right? We want to put our contacts that are going to be called through this lead stream into that folder. I could tag them. I could add a lead source, which is something I'd highly recommend that you do. This is a Hot Fresh Leads. Obviously, you'd want to name it after the lead vendor, the source that you got the leads from. I'm not going to worry about duplicate matching because I know all of these contacts are duplicates because they're just my sample phone numbers. And then we're going to go ahead and click Next. I see my summary and I click Yes, please import. Now the system is going to start processing that file and importing those contacts, and it just completed. Now I can click on View Imported Contacts. We'll see all 89 of those contacts are in my Hot Fresh Leads folder. And now, whether it's me or one of my sales reps, they can go to the Hot Fresh Leads and they can begin dialing. And the really cool thing about a Blind Pull LeadStream is we can have multiple people dialing from the same pool of data, and nobody's going to be stepping on each other's toes. Everybody's going to be calling different contacts, different leads from the pool. Doesn't matter if it's 2 or 200 people dialing from the same pool of leads, the system will ensure nobody's calling the same contacts. And because this is our Hot Fresh Leads, I want to show you something else that's really cool about this. Let's go ahead and begin a dial session. Grant mic access. I'm going to get a couple calls in. So here you see it's just going to start feeding contacts to me as I'm going. I didn't have to select the specific records. It's just calling through that pool of data, right? So whether it's a voicemail, a no answer, or they connect. And let's say this contact connects. We have a great conversation. So I've wrapped up my call, and here we are. So now, let's say a new lead comes into the pool. Either I import the data. As you know, we just saw how to import data into the system. Or we're using the API to feed data into the system from an external system. Or you're using something like Zapier to zap new records over into PhoneBurner. Now remember, any new records that are added to the Hot Fresh Leads folder are going to get bumped to the top of the list, right? So the way the Blind Pull LeadStream works is any new, fresh, uncalled contacts are bumped to the top of the list. So the freshest lead is always at the top of the list, even if there's other leads that haven't been called yet. So as you can see here, all of these contacts were imported at the same time. So if a new lead comes in, whether it's, again, through an import or through the API, through Zapier, whatever method it is that you get the leads. Maybe they're coming from a lead vendor that's posting those leads into your phone burner account. You just need to make sure that those leads are going into the hot, fresh leads folder. So I'm going to mimic this by just adding a contact, right? So let's assume Billy Demo fills out a form somewhere, right? And that generates a contact in our system. So I got to get a phone number. I'm going to bring a phone number, throw it in here. Obviously, there'd probably be more stuff than that you're getting. I don't know where your leads are coming from, right? I don't want them going into the contacts folder. I need them going into the hot, fresh leads folder. So however I'm driving those contacts into the system, in this particular case, I'm using the add a contact, but I need to get them into hot, fresh leads. Add the contact. You'll see Billy Demo was added to this. I'm sorting the contacts right now based off of date added. That does not affect the prioritization of the leads in the lead stream at all. But now what you'll see, new lead came in. Let's say I set an appointment with Colossus, or maybe he's a follow-up. Doesn't matter. My next call is Billy Demo. So it doesn't matter if it's me or one of the other reps that's dialing through that Blind Pull LeadStream. If somebody's in that Blind Pull LeadStream, when a new lead comes into it, that lead is the very next phone call. So you can literally get on the phone with contacts within seconds of them filling out a form and getting added to your phone burner account. So you can blow your prospects away by how quickly you can connect with them by having these contacts fed fresh, live into the folder that's driving a Blind Pull LeadStream. You just need to make sure that you have a team that's always in there making calls. And then those contacts will get called right away. Now, of course, if Billy doesn't answer, so let's say he was unavailable for whatever reason, or it was a no answer, or voicemail, or busy signal, then we just continue on, right? We go on to the next contact that was in the queue. If a new lead had come in while we were calling Billy Demo, then that new lead would be the next phone call that's made, right? So all of these contacts, everybody that we're calling, all these leads that we're calling, as we call them, they're getting moved into our receiving folder. But you'll notice that not every call that we've made is in our receiving folder, because one of them was a follow-up. I forget who it was, but it was one of these guys was a follow-up. But all of these contacts that we call are getting put into the hot, fresh receiving folder the moment we start to call them. And if we look at the details, for example, Billy Demo, we can see that he's due to be recycled in less than 2 hours. Remember, we set the recycle time to 2 hours. So it's already been over a minute since we called him. So less than 2 hours, he's going to recycle. He's going to go back into our hot, fresh leads folder. And depending on how many other contacts are in the hot, fresh leads folder and how many times they've been called, that'll determine when Billy Demo will get called again, right? So in 2 hours, he's going to be available, but it's all going to depend on where he is in the prioritization. Like if he's been called 10 times, he's going to be lower on the prioritization in my specific account. So if that's something that you want to have configured on your account, of course, just reach out to our support team. We'll make sure that your account is configured to prioritize calls in a Blind Pull LeadStream based off of the total number of times someone's been called. What I like about that, especially for hot, fresh leads, is it automatically creates a deprioritization. So as I call my contacts, they're automatically getting deprioritized the more often they've been called. And the newer leads have a higher prioritization because they have fewer calls. They're always jumping ahead of other contacts when they recycle because they have fewer number of calls. So anyway, like I said, this was going to be a little bit of a longer training, but I wanted to make sure that we went through this Blind Pull LeadStream setup from start to finish to help you see, one, how easy it is, how quick you can actually build out a what you might call a calling campaign. We don't really refer to it as a calling campaign here, but how quick it is for you to get up and running with Phone Burner. One of the most powerful features, in my opinion, is the Blind Pull LeadStream in Phone Burner, allowing you and your organization to share a pool of leads. Having multiple people calling through that lead list at the same time without stepping on each other's toes is incredible. And you have the control. You can recycle contacts back into that lead stream. You can recycle them into other folders. But my favorite, recycle it back into that lead stream and just have people churning and burning through that data. You can always move contacts out at some point in the future if you've decided, well, you know what, we've called these contacts enough. Let's move them out so that we just don't call them anymore. Totally up to you. So anyway, that's what I've got for you on this specific training. I hope this helps you and your organization get the most out of Phone Burner so that you can talk to more people and close more deals using the power of Phone Burner. Thanks again, and happy dialing.